There's never been a better time to use a build that combines two elements together, and with this season's artifact we managed to combine two of the strongest elements, Solar and Stasis, to create a build so harmoniously perfect that it absolutely destroys any endgame content like Legend Master Lost Sectors, Raid or Dungeons, and even Grandmaster Nightfalls. A lot of the attention this season has gone towards Solar builds, but thanks to the artifact this season, and it's a heck of a long season by the way, it's opened up the door to many combination builds involving Strand, Solar, and Stasis. But this Solar Stasis Warlock build is my favourite one yet. Dim link for the build will be in my Discord, link for which will be in the comments or description below. In this build we combine two unlikely exotics together, Polaris Lance and Osmiomancy gloves, so that we have complete mastery in terms of crowd control by freezing all of our opponents, massive ad clear potential through constant ignitions, and even great single target DPS, whether it be to champions or bosses as well. This build also has all three champions covered. Stasis through slow and shatter takes care of overload and unstoppable champions, while Solar through radiant and ignitions takes care of barrier and unstoppable champions. So the Osmiomancy gloves provide a whole host of benefits. They provide a second grenade charge, they provide better cold snap tracking, and they provide a good chunk of grenade energy back whenever you hit a target with the grenade or whenever you freeze an enemy. Freezing is important to the build because not only does it provide crowd control, but it also increases our Polaris Lance damage by 50% when enemies are frozen. Now there are times where you do use the cold snap grenade, but a lot of the time we want to use our stasis turrets through the Bleak Watcher aspects. This allows us to create turrets when charging our cold snap grenades, and these turrets will auto seek out enemies and shoot bolts at them, which applies slow and eventually will cause the enemy to freeze. With our second aspect, Ice Flare bolts, whenever we shatter a frozen enemy, it will create another seeker which can freeze other enemies. We even create stasis crystals thanks to our artifact perks this season, which when we kill encase combatants, and then when you combine this with Polaris Lance's ignitions, these will shatter and proc Whisper of Shards, which further increases our grenade recharge rate by a whopping 500%, which can be extended up to 11 seconds on multiple crystal shatters, which happens quite a bit thanks to the ignitions from Polaris. Now the optimal way to play Osmiomancy Warlock is to use one turret and then to spam regular cold snaps to gain back your grenade energy quickly, rather than to use two turrets at once and then have zero grenade energy. If you use cold snaps this way, you'll be quickly at 2 cold snap charges again, and then you can easily get out 3 to 4 turrets in a short space of time. But in harder content or when playing solo, this isn't always easy to do, especially if you want to shoot in between using your grenades. My recommendation to you guys would be to experiment with both methods. There's no real right method here. Sometimes it is way easier mentally to just chuck 2 stasis turrets and let them do their work while you plink away with Polaris Lance. Now if we combine the above stasis build with one of the best weapons this season, Polaris Lance, it means we not only have the crowd control potential of Stasis, but we also get the devastating effects of Solar. Polaris Lance every 4th headshot, and these don't have to be consecutive headshots, loads an explosive shot which applies Scorch. Every 2 of these explosive shots will trigger an ignition without any sort of addition like Ember of Ashes. Now these ignitions are great for ad clear, but they're also incredible for annihilating champions this season. Thanks to our artifact perks, Flint Striker with rapid precision hits, we gain Radiant, which boosts our damage by 25% and provides us with anti-barrier, and then Polaris refunds our ammo for precision hits, meaning we can infinitely chain headshots and infinitely chain Radiant and ignitions. It's kind of wild. Polaris Lance on its own is absolutely S tier this season, but my god, it's absolutely incredible with this stasis build, especially when the ignitions combine with the shatters. The chain reaction from Ice Flare bolts and the spreading Scorch causing further ignitions is just so satisfying. So let's go over our subclass in more detail. I'm running Healing Rift for survivability, Burst Glide, Penumbral Blast, Cold Snap grenades because sometimes these are the better option to throw rather than a stasis turret to quickly gain grenade energy back. I've already talked about my aspects, Ice Flare bolts and Bleak Watcher. In terms of fragments, I'm running Whisper of Chains because this provides an additional 40% damage resistance when we're next to frozen targets or stasis crystals. Whisper of Shards, which provides 500% increased grenade regeneration whenever we break a stasis crystal. Whisper of Torment, which provides even more grenade energy whenever we take damage, And finally, Whisper of Rending, which provides the 50% extra damage against frozen targets to all primary ammo weapons, which includes Polaris Lance. Next, I'll go over our artifact perks, which are super important to the build. Kindling Trigger applies Scorch to unscorched combatants when radiant, which is useful to help trigger more ignitions. Flame, Fiber, and Freeze combines Solar and Stasis and Strand Siphon mods into one, which is super useful for this build specifically. Flint Striker helps us gain radiant, which not only provides us with a 25% damage buff, but gives us anti-barrier through rapid precision hits with Polaris Lance. Torch gives us 5% increased weapon damage when we're using our Polaris Lance against slowed or frozen enemies. Pillar of Ice spawns stasis crystals when we defeat frozen enemies, which we can break manually or through ignitions to trigger Whisper of Shards. These crystals also proc Whisper of Chains for more damage resistance as well. Hail the Storm increases shatter damage and causes even more crowd control through slowing. And then finally, Rays of Precision causes our Polaris Lance headshot kills to ignite enemies, which is useful against weaker enemies where you can't chain headshots for the explosive rounds. In terms of armor mods, the aim here is to get our grenade energy back as quickly as possible. On our helmet, I run the dual strand Solar Siphon mod, so both our Polaris Lance and our first slot weapon spawns Orbs of Power. I'm also running Heavy Ammo Finder and Scout, as primary weapon kills through Polaris increases the chance to spawn heavy ammo. On my gloves, I run 1 grenade kickstart alongside 1 impact induction and 1 momentum transfer. Run the relevant resistance mods on your chest piece depending on the activity you're in. And then on my boots, I ran 2 innovation mods and 1 absolution, so we maximize the grenade energy we got from Orbs of Power, but you can switch out 1 innovation mod for recuperation for more survivability. Finally, on my cloak, I ran double bomber for more grenade energy when we cast our rift, and Reaper for even more orb generation after we get a weapon kill with Polaris Lance after using our rift. In terms of stat priority, there's only 2 stats you really need to prioritize. In number 1, 100 resilience is the most important stat because it provides 30% damage reduction. And then in close second is discipline, which you want as close to 100 as possible to improve grenade regeneration. Your other stats really don't matter as much for this build. For weapons to pair with Polaris Lance, I highly recommend pairing it with the scatter signal in your kinetic slot, which is now the best fusion rifle in the game. And then for your heavy slot, you do have a few options, but I love using my Apex Predator with reconstruction and bait and switch for DPS phases, or even for quick burst damage to champions. The great thing about these weapons, because of overflow and scatter signal and reconstruction on Apex Predator, is that you don't have to spend time reloading them, so you can quickly use them and then go back to plinking away with Polaris Lance. So there you have it, my Stasis Solar combo build that is an absolute force to reckon with this season. Constant freezes, shatters, and ignitions alongside triple champion coverage makes it an incredible build to use solo as well as within a team. If you enjoyed what I talked about today, remember to smash the like button and subscribe to the channel for more Destiny builds, both PvE and PvP. I'm Mr. Ronit, and that's it for today. Peace out, guys.